Hi there, fellow sea glass lovers. Thanks so much for joining me today. I'm Jackie, and this is part 2 in a 3-part video series that I'm doing to create a sea glass mosaic on this very large antique window. Now this is a fairly big project, so it's taking me a while to get it done, but I will eventually finish it. In my last video, I showed you what I did to create these beautiful sea glass stars, which don't look very exciting at the moment, but by the time I finish my sea glass mosaic, they should really pop. That's my goal. And in today's video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what I'm going to do to create the base of this. So the night skyscape that's going to go along the bottom of this piece to kind of ground the piece and give you an idea of all that stuff that's down there. When you look out into the sky, you're looking mostly at the sky, but there's all this dark stuff silhouetted at the bottom. So that's what I'm going to show you today. And then in my next video, I'll show you what I'll do to fill in all the background of the stars to really make those stars pop. So join me for this one. So to guide me in creating my skyscape here, on the back of my glass, I drew a line about 4 inches up with a dry erase marker on the back of the glass. This is just as a rough guide because skyscapes do not need to be straight. It's just wherever there's trees or background, I just want to make sure that I'm kind of evenly going along the whole piece. And the other thing is I picked out a whole bunch of rocks and a piece of driftwood there and a few extra things that I just thought would be good to use for creating buildings and structures in the bottom. And then I have a tray of brown sea glass because the whole base of this piece is going to be brown. And with that, I have the only other thing I need, I have my quick seal adhesive caulk to use as glue. I've got a couple of poking sticks and a bit of paper towel and my tweezers, and that's it. I'm ready to go. So before I start gluing any pieces on, I set a lot of the main elements in place here. So any of those large pieces that are going to sit towards the bottom of my piece, I know that I want to kind of make sure that I'm going to get a good sense of balance. This is really important, especially when you're doing a piece this large. And I've played around with these quite a bit just to kind of get an idea of where I'm planning to go with the bottom of this piece. And my plan is to fill in the rest of the bottom part with brown sea glass, but because I haven't glued anything in place, I'm not committed to the placement that I've put them in this moment. And I can play around with that as I'm gluing in. And if I feel like I need to add any more rocks or anything that isn't brown sea glass, I can just add it in as I go. So as I'm gluing on here, I start at the bottom and then work my way towards the top of the night skyscape. And I want it to be darker and heavier at the bottom and then a little bit lighter towards the top, keeping in mind that a skyscape tends to be silhouetted against the night sky, so it doesn't have to be really well structured. So the other thing that I'm keeping in mind here is I have these more structural shapes in rocks versus I'm putting some darker brown things that look like the shadows of trees. I know I want to contrast the structure with the trees as I'm going. One of the things that I've done here in a couple of places is I've put a bottle bottom. Here's 2 bottle bottoms actually, right beside some bottle tops. I find that these bottle tops give a lot of dimension because they're curved. So you get them like this. Bottle top pieces are curved and they add a lot of interest to the bottom of a skyscape like this. And then over here I'm doing the same thing. Some more bottle bottoms contrast it with the tops. And here as well, I've even put in 3 completely round tops right beside a fairly large bottle bottom. And then I'm getting into some of my rock structures as well. So a contrast between circles and more structural rocks. These pieces of, see those pieces there, that's petrified wood. So it's wood that's actually fossilized. I find quite a bit of that at my favorite beach, and I find it just fascinating. It kind of sparkles in the sun as well. So even though the majority of my night skyscape is going to be brown sea glass, I'm looking for some really interesting rocks to add interest. So I've got some very cool kind of rectangular and square shaped rocks here, and rocks with lines in it. Here are these 3 rocks, and I've kind of lined them up so there's a continuous line with the 3 rocks, and a rock with a hole in it. That's a hagstone. Hagstones are meant to be good luck. And some really interesting red rocks, and again, rocks that have shapes in them. Now this piece of sea glass that I'm using for the head of the nukshuk is fascinating. It's actually a piece of bonfire glass, so there's some dark ash or something that got trapped inside of the glass when it was melted in a bonfire. So all of that adds interest to your piece. And some fascinating rocks there. Another series of 3 rocks where there's some white lines in it. So although I want darkness at the bottom of my piece, I also want to add little bits of interest where I can. So in my last video, when I was showing you how to create the stars, if you watched that, you would have seen me show you how to stand some pieces of sea glass on end to really add some interest. And I love to do that when I'm creating large brown sections as well. Because if you just lay out all the brown pieces, it is interesting, but then I like to create these lines of pieces of sea glass standing on end. So I'll take a piece of sea glass that has a straight edge and just squeeze a little line of silicone along the edge, and then I'll stand it up. And making a line of these pieces of sea glass standing up just adds more dimension and more interest. I'm sorry about my scratchy voice here today. One of my favorite things in life is having grandchildren. And I never give up the opportunity to spend time with them. But you know, grandchildren are like little germ factories because they're kids and they hang out with other kids. And anyway, so I've picked up a bit of a cold, which has kind of taken my voice on me. But I sound worse than I feel. I'm feeling fairly well, actually. And I always like to do things that kind of draws a person's attention in to look a little bit closer and just to take note of, oh, what's that happening there? And then if you do this in a number of different places in a piece, especially a piece this large, it really does add a lot of interest. And then if I just glue a row of sea glass on top of that row of standing up pieces, it helps close it in and give it a more finished look. And then what I've done is I've added pieces standing on end all the way along here. And then it creates a bit of a pattern for your eye to follow as you're looking across a piece. And that looks really good in a piece that has this long of a skyscape at the bottom of it. And the pattern continues on this side of the piece as well, with rows of sea glass standing on end here, and here, and here, and a few over here as well. And once I've finished filling in the bottom of a piece like this, I like to stand back and look at where could I add some details. And that's where I'll often put pieces on top. So in this structural area here, I found adding some pieces on top was really interesting. And like right here, I think it would be interesting to add a door at the bottom. And I'm going to put some like 3 little shells in here that kind of look like windows going up. Just adds some interest there. And then I have a couple of pieces of orange sea glass. They're not really well finished, but they kind of give a little bit of a sparkle that I might put right there. And I might add another little door on this one. Little window there, door there. You want to be careful not to overdo it, but just a few little fine details like that
just kind of give you a little bit more of a sense of this is a line of buildings. And then I added a really cool brown piece of sea glass on top of that piece of sea glass just for interest. And I have this little red rock that I think I'll just set here on the ledge of this rock. And here's another thing that reads like a ledge to me. I have this piece of sea glass standing on end sticking out here. And I'm just going to put a little shell there that's like perched up on the ledge, just to add some interest there. Now this piece of sea glass here, I just love it, but there's a great big spall in it. And sometimes when I get a piece of, like a really well-finished brown piece of sea glass with a spall in it, it's interesting to me to just take another piece of sea glass and put it on top of the spall, kind of like covering it up, but it adds another bit of detail as well. And then I'll often use a big piece like this to add something for interest. So I have this tiny piece of petrified wood that I'm going to put there. I'll glue that on, and then I'm going to glue 3 little rocks on, just for interest. So let your imagination go wild and say, what can I do that's just going to add a bit more interest and draw a person's eye line in so that they look fairly close. Now, before I go any further, I want to take my piece and stand it up against the wall and take a close look at it to make sure that I don't have any holes in it or there's nothing that I need to do to change or add to my skyscape before I proceed to do the sky. And I think it looks pretty good. I've added a few pieces here and there just to make sure it's all filled in. And now I'm ready to go ahead with the sky. So join me for my next video and I will show you how I complete the sky and finish this very large sea glass mosaic. So thanks so much for joining me today. I hope until next time that you get a chance to get out to the beach, and happy sea glass hunting.